We moved to Marlow 4 years ago, looking for a slower pace and cleaner air. It was a town so small that everyone waved from their cars, and the mayor still walked to work. They had a pumpkin festival every October, a diner that closed at 2 p.m. sharp, and 3 churches on the same street: Baptist, Methodist, and the big white one with a steeple that rang on the hour. We chose that one. New Harmony Pentecostal. Sounded inviting. And Pastor Greg? He was younger than I expected, mid-40s, the kind of guy who made bad jokes and ended sermons with hugs. He'd been born here, left for seminary, and came back to shepherd the town like a prodigal son with a master's degree. His wife, Renee, was one of those women who smiled with her whole face. Always hosting potlucks, always first to volunteer. And then there was my wife, Sarah. She loved it all. The choir, the Bible study group, the Sunday picnics. She said church made her feel anchored. I didn't argue. I figured anything that gave her peace was worth supporting. So I went, sat through the sermons, passed the collection plate, nodded when the pastor said something about forgiveness or unity. We had one daughter, Ellie, 6 years old, all teeth and honesty. She liked Sunday school mostly because they gave out donut holes. She'd color pictures of Jonah and the whale and tell me about how God was everywhere, even in the bathroom. I'd laugh and tuck her in. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least, I thought we were. It started slow. Sarah began staying late on Wednesdays after Bible study. Just helping organize the silent auction, she said one night. Fundraising for the new youth center, another time. She'd come home smelling like potluck food and cheap perfume, not hers. I didn't say anything. I worked full-time for the county in records and logistics, mostly back office. I wasn't the jealous type. If she said she was helping the church, I believed her. Until Ellie said something. It was a Saturday. I was fixing a leaky faucet, and she was on the floor of the bathroom, playing with a doll in the cabinet under the sink. She said it like it was nothing. Mommy was hugging Pastor Greg behind the shed on Wednesday. I froze. The church shed. She said. They were really close. I think they were praying. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't know how to process that. Instead, I just said, "Thanks, sweetie," and handed her another plastic toy she'd dropped. That night, I watched Sarah closer. She acted normal. Cooked dinner. Watched a sitcom on her iPad. Laughed like nothing was wrong. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. A hug? Could have been innocent. Behind the shed? Weird. Late at night? No reason. And why would they be praying outside alone? I didn't ask her. Not yet. I wanted to be sure. I didn't want to accuse her without something concrete. In our church, gossip destroyed people. A rumor like that? It could rip our whole family apart. I wasn't going to be the guy who threw that kind of grenade unless I knew exactly what I was holding. So I waited. Watched. Checked her phone once when she was in the shower. Nothing. Just recipe links and a group chat about volunteer schedules. No texts from Greg. No weird pictures. But then again, maybe she used another app. Or deleted them. She wasn't dumb. 2 Wednesdays later, I told her I'd be working late and couldn't make it to the service. She kissed me goodbye. Wore more makeup than usual. I watched from my truck down the street. Bible study ended at 8 o'clock. She walked out with her little group at 8:10, but didn't get in the car. She lingered, then walked around the back of the church. 5 minutes passed. Then I saw him, Pastor Greg, coming from the opposite side. They met behind the tool shed, mostly blocked from view, but not entirely. I could see shapes, movement. No one else around. He leaned in. She put her hand on his chest. It wasn't a prayer circle. I drove off before I did something stupid. That night, she came home at 9:30. Said they were planning decorations for the upcoming baptism ceremony. Told me she got roped into cleanup duty. I nodded. Pretended to be half asleep on the couch. Inside, my stomach was acid. Next day, I drove 2 towns over and bought a mini spy cam online, disguised as a keychain. Motion activated. Audio recording. Battery good for 8 hours. I tested it twice in the garage. Then I walked into church that Sunday and dropped it behind the shed just before service started. Taped it under the vent near the ground where no one would see it. Pastor Greg gave a sermon on forgiveness that day. Sarah clapped the loudest. Wednesday came. Same routine. She left for Bible study. Said she might be late. I said I didn't mind. As soon as she was gone, I drove to the church, parked at the gas station, and waited. She came out at 8:12. He followed at 8:16. They disappeared behind the shed. This time, I didn't drive off. I waited until 9:30. When she finally left, then snuck back to the vent and retrieved the camera. I went home and plugged it into my laptop. What I saw made my skin crawl. There wasn't a prayer. There wasn't a Bible in sight. But there were hands. His on her waist. Hers on his collar. They kissed. They laughed. And just before she left, she looked him in the eye and said, "Same time next week?" He nodded. Said, "You're the best thing I've ever had." She giggled like a teenager. I watched it all in silence. Then I hit save. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I'd do something. Something she wouldn't see coming. And neither would he. After I watched the footage from the confession cam, I didn't confront her. Not right away. I just sat with it. For hours. I watched it more than once. Not to punish myself. To make sure it was real. I studied every movement. The angle of his hand. The way she leaned into him like it was muscle memory. The way they both laughed like it was normal. Like what they were doing behind a church shed, while their families trusted them, was just part of the routine. It wasn't a one-time thing. You could tell by how comfortable they were. It wasn't lust, either. This had layers. Timing. Structure. Coded glances. Practice. They knew how to be invisible, and they'd used that knowledge well. But they didn't know I was watching now. And that changed everything. I didn't go to Thursday night fellowship that week. Said I had a headache. Sarah didn't push. She left wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. Blue, floral, one of those flowy kinds she only wore when she wanted attention. Ellie stayed home with me. We ate frozen pizza and played board games until her bedtime. I stared at the baby monitor long after she fell asleep. Sarah came home just after 10. Said they were rehearsing for the women's prayer night. I asked what that meant. She said, "Just songs and group verses." "Sounds like a performance," I said. She smiled and kissed my forehead. "It's more of a bonding thing." I nodded. Let it go. The next morning, I visited Renee, Pastor Greg's wife, my sister-in-law. That's the part no one outside the family talked about much. How small town this whole mess really was. Renee and Sarah had grown up together. Same high school. Same church. Greg had been a few years older, dated Renee after college, married her quick. Sarah had been the maid of honor. I was a groomsman. Renee was the one who introduced me to Sarah. Said she'd never met someone more faithful. Funny how words don't age well when they're wrapped in lies. Renee and Greg lived in a brown ranch house off Route 6, with a cross on the wall and a flower box that always had something blooming, even in winter. She offered me iced tea. I declined. "I'll get to it," I said. She sat. I didn't sugarcoat it. "I need you to tell me how long this has been going on." Her face didn't move. No shock. No gasp. Just stillness. I knew right then. "You knew?" I said. She blinked. "Not at first," she said. "But eventually?" She looked down. "I figured it out maybe 6 months ago. Maybe longer. And you just let it happen?" Her hands trembled a little as she folded them in her lap. "I asked him," she said. He denied it. Said I was being paranoid. That Sarah was like a sister to him. I scoffed. "She's your sister." "I know," she said. "Believe me, I know." I stood up. "Paste. I've got footage. From behind the shed." She flinched. "You recorded them?" "Yes." Her voice dropped. "Does anyone else know?" "No." She stood too. "You can't go public with this." "Why not?" "Because it'll destroy the church." "That's not my problem. It is if you plan to stay in this town." I stared at her. "You're protecting him?" "I'm protecting everyone," she said. "Including Ellie. Including the people who trust him every Sunday." I sat down again. Slowly. "You didn't just cover for them," I said. "You made it easier." She didn't deny it. "I thought maybe if I looked the other way," she said, "he'd come back to me eventually. And if he didn't?" I didn't want to raise questions. About the church. About our marriage. About what kind of woman I was. I understood that part. Not respected it, but understood it. Some people fear shame more than betrayal. I was the opposite. I wanted the truth out in the open. I wanted people to see what she did. What he did. And who helped it happen. "You won't stop me," I said. She shook her head. "I'm not going to try." "Then why this meeting?" "Because I want you to know," she said. "If you do this, if you go scorched earth, don't expect applause. I don't care about applause. You care about your daughter." That cut deep. She was right. Ellie was already asking questions about why Mommy and Daddy didn't sit together at church anymore. Why Daddy had been sleeping in the guest room on hot nights. Why Mommy cried in the car sometimes after prayer group. I'd kept her away from it so far. But if I blew this up, she'd see it, feel it, live in it. I had to be precise. Surgical. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about message. That Sunday, Sarah hosted the women's prayer circle at our house. 10 women, mostly from the church, all with Bibles in their laps and cookies in their mouths. They gathered in the living room. I was in the garage, pretending to fix a busted light switch. Inside, I had a Bluetooth receiver paired to the smart TV. The USB was already loaded in the side. The confession cam footage, just 94 seconds long. Enough. I waited for Sarah to start reading. Then I clicked play. The video cut into the TV with no sound. At first, they didn't notice. Just blurry motion. Then someone pointed. Then they watched. Sarah turned around, saw it, and froze. It played from beginning to end. No audio. No subtitles. Just them. Behind the shed. Hands. Kisses. Same time next week. Then it looped once. No one said anything. Then the question started. What is this? Is that? Behind the church? Sarah didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stood there, arms slack, mouth slightly open. The woman next to her, Linda Moore, whose husband built the altar cross, slowly turned her Bible over and laid it face down on the coffee table. No one prayed that night. No one finished their cookies. By the time I stepped out of the garage, half the women had left. The rest were gathering their things. Sarah was still standing, her face drained of everything. When our eyes met, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just said, "Why would you do this?" I said, "Ask your sister," and walked out. Monday morning, Sarah was gone when I woke up. No note. No text. Her car was missing from the driveway. Her Bible, too. Ellie was still asleep, so I didn't ask questions. I let her stay in dreamland while the town around us started waking up or unraveling, depending on how you looked at it. By 9 a.m., the church Facebook page had disabled comments. By noon, the video had been passed around via private messages, like some underground confession. A few of the prayer circle women, apparently unaware they were on my Bluetooth speaker, tried calling Sarah. She didn't answer. Renee called me just after 2. "She's here," she said. I didn't say anything. "She's crying." "Good." There was a long silence. "Are you done?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not even close." That night, I made dinner for Ellie. Spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite. She asked where Mommy was. I told her Mommy was helping Aunt Renee. Technically true. She asked if we were mad at each other. I said, "A little." Then I added, "But it's not your fault, okay?" She nodded. Went back to twirling noodles. There are things you don't explain to kids. Not because you're hiding them, but because the weight of betrayal is too heavy for someone with fingers still too small to hold a fork properly. Wednesday evening was Pastor Greg's regular midweek sermon. He canceled it. No reason posted. Just a note taped to the church door. Service will resume next week. People showed up anyway. Out of habit or curiosity, they stood in the gravel lot and talked in lowered voices. Whispers traveled faster than gospel in this town. I didn't go. I stayed home, shaved for the first time in days, and typed up a single-page letter. Then I printed 42 copies, one for each mailbox on our side of the township. It read, "To the congregation of New Harmony. Last week, my wife Sarah and Pastor Greg were caught on hidden camera behind the church shed. Not in prayer, not in ministry, in betrayal. This is not a rumor. This is a fact. Some of you have already seen the footage. If you haven't, ask those who attended Wednesday's women's prayer group. My daughter deserves the truth. So do yours." Eric Whitman. I folded the letters, addressed them by hand, and spent Thursday morning delivering them with the quiet precision of a mailman in mourning. By Friday, Sarah was still at Renee's. Greg was still off the grid. The deacons hadn't called me, which told me they were meeting without me, likely figuring out how to bury it all before Sunday. So I went to visit them. Not in secret. I walked into the church office during office hours and asked for Deacon Hale. He emerged from the back with a face like a thundercloud and a handshake like wet paper. "Eric," he said. "Don't pretend you didn't know," I said. He didn't answer, just gestured to the small meeting room. Inside, I laid it all out. The affair, the camera, the video, the prayer circle, the letter. Then I added one more thing. "The man who baptized my daughter," I said, "has been sleeping with my wife." No one interrupted me. Not Deacon Hale. Not his assistant. Not the secretary who peeked in, then closed the door again. "Greg is a man of God," Hale finally said. "No," I replied. "Greg is a man who uses God." And then I dropped the final match. "I found something else," I said. And you're going to want to hear it before I share it with the whole town. I hadn't told Renee yet. I hadn't told Sarah, but I'd started digging a few days ago. Out of curiosity, or spite, or the need to turn over every stone before I walked away from everything. I'd requested marriage records. Not just mine. Greg's, Renee's, Sarah's. They were all public documents. Easy to get if you knew where to look. And what I found, Greg and Sarah had filed a marriage license in Arkansas 2 years ago. No divorce record on file. That meant they were, by legal definition, married. And so was Sarah. To me, the ink on her license with me was older, but still active. I ran the dates 3 times. It was undeniable. My wife was married to 2 men, and the second one was her sister's husband. That was no affair. That was bigamy. And if Renee had helped arrange their late-night rendezvous, she wasn't just complicit. She was accessory. Back in the church office, I watched Hale's face drain of color as I slid the Arkansas document across the table. Do you know what this means? I asked. He nodded, slowly. If you keep Greg in the pulpit, I said, I'll file criminal charges. If you keep Sarah on any volunteer lists, I'll contact every parent in the youth ministry. And if Renee keeps her mouth shut, she'll go down too. The room was silent. This doesn't go away with a quiet resignation, I said. It ends my way. And then I stood up, walked out, and waited for the town to catch up. Saturday, Ellie went to stay with my parents. I told her it was for the weekend, just for fun. She packed her coloring books and a stuffed dog and hugged me around the waist. Sarah hadn't come home. Not once. She'd texted a few times. Can we talk? Please call me. You don't understand. I didn't reply. I was done talking to ghosts who wore wedding rings they didn't earn. Instead, I went back to the garage, pulled out the old video equipment I'd used for her birthday parties and Christmas mornings, and I started editing. Not the footage this time. A presentation. A show. Because Sunday morning wasn't just a church service anymore. It was curtain call. Sunday morning in a small religious town has a rhythm you can feel in your bones. The streets are quiet by 8 a.m. By 9, cars line the curb near New Harmony Baptist. Same makes, same order. You could close your eyes and know who was where by the sound of their engines shutting off. At 9:30, the ushers unlock the front doors. At 9:45, the greeters line up. At 10, the choir starts warming up, even if the pastor doesn't show. At 10:15, people settle into pews and pretend not to look around to see who's missing. But this Sunday wasn't like the others. Because by 9:30, I was already in the sound booth. No one stopped me. No one even looked surprised to see me there. Renee didn't show. Sarah didn't either. Greg? He was late. But he came. Through the side entrance, like he always did. Tan blazer. Bible under his arm. He looked thinner. Paler. Older. Like 5 days of silence had aged him 5 years. The organist played the intro hymn, Come Thou Fount. He stepped up to the podium. People smiled. Nodded. Sighed in relief. Even after the rumors, the letters, the video, they wanted to believe he was still their rock. Still the man who baptized their kids and quoted Corinthians like it was breath. They wanted to believe the worst thing he did was make a mistake. He looked out over the crowd. Then he saw me. His eyes locked. Held. I didn't blink. He cleared his throat and opened the Bible. That's when I hit play. It wasn't the shed footage this time. That had done its job. This was cleaner. More strategic. More undeniable. The screen behind the choir lit up, something we usually used for hymn lyrics or PowerPoint sermon notes. Instead, the congregation saw this. Title slide. Marriage records and timeline. Prepared by Eric Whitman. There was a long pause. Then the second slide. Sarah and Whitman. Married to Eric Whitman, March 2011, Oklahoma. Married to Gregory Paul Brenner, July 2021, Arkansas. I let that sit. No narration. No music. Just silence and the sound of rustling fabric as people leaned forward or shifted in the pews. Third slide. Relevant laws. Oklahoma Statute Title 21 Section 881 Bigamy. A person who is married and marries another is guilty of bigamy. Arkansas Code Section 5-26-201 Same. Greg's face had gone white. He stepped away from the podium. Slowly. His lips moved, but no words came out. I clicked again. Witness affidavit. I, Renee Brenner, confirm that I discovered my husband and sister's relationship in 2022. Signed, notarized affidavit, timestamped. People gasped. I kept going. Slide after slide. Text messages. Church emails. Activity logs from Sarah's phone during Bible study nights. A photo of the two of them together in a motel parking lot from last year, courtesy of a neighbor's Ring camera. I ended the presentation with one final slide. Confession cam footage. Footage previously shared at the Women's Prayer Circle on March 9th. Full file has been submitted to legal counsel. Then I shut the projector off. Silence. Not a sound in the whole sanctuary. Greg stood frozen at the altar. He still hadn't moved. Then a cough. Then whispers. Then, finally, one brave voice. Is this real? Followed by another. What are you going to do about it? I didn't answer either of them. Instead, I walked down the aisle. Slow. Deliberate. Greg stepped off the stage and moved toward the side door. Someone, Deacon Hale, stepped in front of him. And that was it. Greg didn't fight. He just stopped, lowered his head, and sat on the edge of the front pew, alone. After the service, if you could still call it that, I waited outside by the gravel lot. People left in clusters. Some avoided eye contact. Others shook my hand. Some even said, "Thank you." I didn't respond much. I just watched the church empty out. Then, as the last car pulled away, Sarah stepped out of a silver sedan across the street. Renee was in the driver's seat. She stayed in the car. Sarah didn't. She crossed the road slowly, like she didn't know if her legs would hold. When she reached me, she didn't speak right away. Just stared at me like she didn't recognize the man she used to be married to. Or maybe like she finally did. "You're going to kill this church," she said. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You did that." I just turned on the lights. She looked back at the building. "Ellie, we'll be fine." I cut her off. "She's staying with my parents until I get things sorted." "Eric, I never wanted it to." "Save it," I said. "This isn't confession. And I'm not your priest." She bit her lip. "You sent the marriage records?" "I did." She looked at the ground. "Then it's over." "No," I said. "Now it begins." Because the state attorney's office would be calling next. Because her job at the school board, the one that required a moral conduct clause, would be up for review. Because Greg's ordainment would be formally revoked. Because Renee? She'd be subpoenaed too. I wasn't done. Not yet. Because there was one more thing she didn't know. And it was coming next. Monday morning, I put on a blue shirt, the only one I owned that didn't look wrinkled or like it remembered marriage counseling. I wasn't dressing up. Just dressing clean. I needed to look like someone who was rebuilding, not unraveling. At 10:15, I walked into the district courthouse. 2 floors. Beige walls. The smell of floor wax and resignation. The clerk at the civil desk gave me a form with a bright yellow sticker on it that read bigamy/fraudulent marriage across the top. It was that common, I guess. I handed over the marriage certificates, both of them, and the notarized witness affidavit. "You have supporting video or communications?" she asked, without even looking up. "Plenty," I said. "Upload here." She slid a small printed card across the counter with a QR code and a link. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. It felt like filing taxes, which was fitting, really, because all this, the lies, the second life, the infidelity, the cowardice, it had been a debt she thought she could avoid paying. And I was just the IRS. Later that afternoon, I met with an attorney. His office was small, over a pawn shop, but his record was solid. He'd prosecuted a bigamy case back in 2019, back when a man in Muskogee had been caught with 2 wives and a 3rd fiancée. He read my file quietly, then whistled once. "She married a pastor while still married to you," he said, flipping pages. "You don't see that every day?" "Yeah, well, she's a giver." He set the folder down and leaned forward. "Are you looking to press criminal charges? Or just annul the marriage?" "Both. You're within your rights. Arkansas and Oklahoma both consider bigamy a felony." I didn't respond. I think he expected me to gloat, to smile, to do that bitter laugh thing that guys do when they've finally got the upper hand. But I wasn't smiling. I wasn't even angry. This was logistics. "I want it on record," I said. "I wanted to follow her the rest of her life." He nodded. "I can file that. And I want full custody," I added. His brow raised slightly. "She's not fighting it. Not yet. She will. I'm counting on it." Because the more she fought, the more of herself she'd expose. And I had receipts. By Thursday, the first subpoena hit Greg's doorstep. I know because Renee told me. She called from a number I didn't recognize. "I'm not trying to change your mind," she said. "But you should know he's talking to a lawyer too." "Good. He's panicking." "He should be." Renee paused. Then she said something I didn't expect. I didn't know it had gone that far. I didn't answer, because that was a lie. She knew, or she chose not to know, which was just cowardice wearing a nicer dress. She tried again. I've left him. I raised an eyebrow, even though she couldn't see it. Left? Or kicked him out? He's staying in a hotel. I don't care where he's staying. She exhaled sharply. I just thought you should hear it from me. Well, you've got one more confession to make then, I said. What? You notarized that affidavit. That makes you a witness. I know. Then start acting like one. And pray that's enough to keep you out of the crosshairs. I hung up. Friday morning, Sarah showed up at the house. No warning. Just rang the bell while I was fixing Ellie's lunch. I opened the door and stared at her. She looked tired. Not in the poetic way. Just used up. Like someone had deflated the version of her that used to smile through communion and recite scripture like it was second nature. I need to talk to you, she said. Ellie peeked out from behind my leg. Mommy. Sarah's eyes went glassy. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She needs stability, I said. I know. You don't provide that. She's my daughter, Eric. Then start acting like it. Her jaw clenched. But she didn't argue. I'm being charged, she said quietly. Yes. You filed that. I did. Why? I blinked once. Slow. Because you married another man. Her lips trembled. It wasn't legal. It was. I have the license. Dated. Stamped. Filed in the county court. She didn't speak for a moment. I thought we were separated, she finally said. No, Sarah. We were sleeping apart. That's not the same. I never meant. Yes, you did. I stepped closer. You meant to be clever. You meant to juggle. You meant to keep both sides happy without anyone knowing. You thought you were smarter than everyone else. You used Ellie. You used me. And now the weight's finally catching up to you. She folded her arms. What do you want? That question landed like a brick. Because there was a time when I would have said, I want you to come home. Or I want you to admit what you did. But now, I want peace, I said. And you can't be part of that anymore. She looked away. Can I see her? Supervised. Court approved. You'll get a schedule. Her voice cracked. She's my baby. No, I said. She's ours. And you lost the right to shape her future the day you knelt at another altar. Saturday came and went. I didn't see Greg. Didn't hear from Renee again. The church posted a message on the bulletin board out front. Due to unforeseen transitions in leadership, Sunday service will be led by Deacon Hale. No one mentioned Greg. No apology. No explanation. But everyone knew. That was the cost of exposure. Not fire. Not brimstone. Just silence. And silence has a way of lingering longer than outrage. Especially in churches. Especially in families. Monday morning came like any other. Except there was no noise. No text from Sarah. No voicemails from Renee. No angry calls from Deacon Hale asking if I'd be willing to mend fences for the sake of the community. The fire was out, but the smoke still hung in the air. I got an email from my lawyer just after 8 a.m. Judge has granted emergency sole custody. Visitation under review pending outcome of charges. I forwarded it to my parents. Then I packed Ellie's lunch. She came downstairs wearing the blue polka dot dress she loved. The one Sarah bought her last year on a trip she swore was just a women's retreat. I didn't have the heart to make her change. Can you pick me up today, Daddy? She asked. I always do, I said. And I meant it. Not just today. From now on. Tuesday brought another envelope. This time from the church. It was printed on official New Harmony letterhead. Dear Brother Whitman, the Board of Deacons acknowledges your recent presentation of evidence regarding former Pastor Gregory Brenner. As of this week, Greg has been placed on administrative leave pending a full internal investigation. In the meantime, the board has voted unanimously to invite you to lead the transition team for selecting our next permanent spiritual leader. We understand the sensitive nature of this request. Regardless of your decision, we thank you for your courage. I read it twice. Then I folded it in half and placed it in the trash. By Wednesday, word had spread that Greg was gone. Not just from the church. From town. Packed up. Moved out. No service. No goodbye. Just a hole where a man used to stand and tell people how to live. I heard later that he was staying with his sister in Nebraska. Starting over. Doing menial labor. Someone whispered, as if punishment had to be poetic. Renee didn't follow him. She stayed. Put her house on the market. Started going to a different church, one with a guitar and a fog machine, the kind that doesn't ask too many questions about your past, if you sing loud enough during the chorus. Sarah? She pled not guilty, but the evidence was airtight. Her public defender made a statement to the court that intent was never malicious, and that the defendant suffered under emotional strain from years of marital decline. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to. A court date was set. Her teaching license was suspended. She moved in with a friend 2 towns over. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes. Because there was no one left to disappoint me. And that, somehow, felt like freedom. A month passed. Then 2. Ellie adjusted. She stopped asking where mommy was every morning. She started sleeping through the night again. She began smiling with her whole face instead of just the polite corners. And me? I started writing again. Not blog posts. Not rants. Just thoughts. Letters to no one. I kept a journal for Ellie. Things I wanted her to know when she got older. What love should feel like. What truth should cost. What it means to stand your ground when everyone around you is building theirs on sand. One entry read, "You'll be lied to someday. And it'll hurt. And you'll want to lie back. Don't. Just tell the truth louder. I think she'll understand it one day. Maybe not now, but someday, when it matters." 6 months later, the bigamy charges stuck. Sarah took a plea deal. Probation. A fine. Public service. Her second marriage was voided. Our divorce was finalized. She lost her job. I kept the house. And custody. Greg? No one knew. Last I heard, he was doing online faith coaching, which was just a fancy way of saying he was monetizing a podcast and hoping no one Googled him too hard. Renee moved out of state. California. Ellie asked once if we'd ever see Aunt Renee again. I said, not for a while. She didn't push. She just nodded and went back to drawing a picture of our house. Just the 2 of us on the porch, stick figures, smiling. There was no third adult in the picture. And that said enough. I went back to New Harmony Baptist once. Not to worship, just to sit. The sanctuary was half full. New pastor. Younger guy. No suit. Just jeans and sneakers and a quiet voice. He talked about truth. About how it burns sometimes. About how light doesn't always feel warm. Sometimes it exposes things we wish would stay hidden. I didn't stay long. Just long enough to see the cross hadn't moved. And neither had the people who were willing to believe in something better, even after watching their idols fall. Maybe that's grace. Maybe it's just denial. But it wasn't my fight anymore. I had one mind. Not with fists. Not even with fury. But with facts. With timing. With patience. With a calm hand and a camera in the right corner of a shed. Some men roar. Some men burn down cities. But me? I just told the truth. And then I watched it do the rest. That night, I tucked Ellie in. She kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. You're the best one." I smiled. Not because I believed it, but because maybe, just maybe, I had become it. The end. Subscribe to the channel